Hello and welcome to Creative Sparkle. My name's Holly and today we're doing an art journal prompt list, so grab your art supplies and let's get crafting. Hello and thank you for joining me today. So working in a recycled book today, but no need to prime because the first prompt is to use magazine, newspaper, book or leaflet, etc. to create the background. So I've got this old magazine that's a Reader's Digest and I usually tear the pages up, but I decided this time to cut them. So I've got some straight pieces rather than the usual mess. So I'm just chopping them up into pieces that I think are decent size for the page, and then I will get those stuck randomly over the page with a glue stick. So I decided not to prime my page today just because I didn't want to cover those text words in the background. I thought it would go well with the background that we're already using. So if you have a different kind of background, feel free to prime before you add your book pages or magazine pages, and add those however you wish. So prompt number 2 is to use clear or watered down white gesso to prime the page. So the reason we're using watered down white gesso, which is what I've decided to go for, is just again to make sure those words still are showing up through the background. So I'm just spreading that over the background. Again, you can use whatever if you don't have gesso or clear gesso, then just use white acrylic paint. That's perfectly fine as well. So prompt number 3 is to use a baby wipe or wet paper towel to apply colour to the background. So I've chosen this chocolate brown and I've put a glove on so I don't make a mess. And I'm using a baby wipe just to add that paint as the prompt said, and I'm just spreading it over the background, and then where it's not dark enough or it's too light or whatever, I'm just adding more. And I'm just making sure that we can still see those words in the background because I like that effect. So prompt number 4 is to apply any one medium through 2 different stencils. So these are the 2 stencils I've chosen, and the 2 inks that I decided to go with: Distress ink, Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain. So I'm using the same medium but in 2 different colours for the 2 different stencils. So I'm starting off with Vintage Photo in the wood texture stencil, and I'm just going to do that randomly over the background. I don't want them too uniform, but I'll cover the background as you can see here. And then the crackle texture looking stencil I'm going to use with the walnut stain, and again just do that randomly over the background so the background is covered as well. So the 2 stencils that you use, you don't have to use ink like I have. If you want to use texture paste, do that, or you can use paint. Use whatever you have available to you and what you think goes well with your page. So once that's done, prompt number 5 is to emboss or add texture to a paper or cardstock. So I've chosen this embossing folder that I have here and this paper pad, or cardstock pad should I say, and I'm literally just going to cut around one of these pages around the embossing folder, and get that embossed, and then that will be the cardstock that I've embossed. So I'm not heat embossing, I'm adding texture to the page, but if you want to heat emboss you can do that, or you can add random patterns to the page. I am going in with those same inks just because I thought it needed a bit more colour and dimension, so I thought going over that background where it's all embossed would be a good texture to add. So I'm just adding that on, and then I'll get that stuck down. So I'm just going to fold it in half because I've decided to put it in the middle of the page, and then I'll cut it down the middle, and I'm simply going to add it with some school glue or PVA glue, whatever you decide to call it. So I'm sticking that down onto the page, and then we can move on to the next prompt. So prompt number 6 is to use the card from step 5 to create a focal image. So obviously I've put that in the middle of the page, and the focal image I've decided to add is a piece of ephemera in the form of an envelope, but I'm not using the envelope side of it, I'm going to use the front side so you can see that there, and I'm just sticking that down simply onto the page, and that is my focal image done. So you can use whatever you have available to you if you want to stamp onto a piece of cardstock, if that's what you prefer, or you can add a drawing as your focal image, whatever you have. Prompt number 7 is to make marks on the page using your fingers. So I've decided to go with the same paint that I used for the background with the baby wipe. Obviously it's lighter in the background because it's been diluted with the baby wipe. So I'm just adding that with my fingers in the corners, and I'm going to add some around the focal image as well, just so that it's more cohesive. And I like the fact that it's added some almost shadows around the page, so it gives it a bit more dimension. So after you've added your finger medium, we can then move on to prompt number 8, which is to add a title relating to sewing to your layout. Relating to sewing, I don't know. It's just part of the prompt list. I'm simply using a felt tip pen and I'm adding the title Sew Vintage, but it's sew as in S-E-W. So the 9th prompt is to stitch or sew a border onto your layout. So for this, I actually cheated a little bit. I didn't use physical stitching. I decided to find a stamp that I had of stitches. So I'm stamping those onto the page with archival ink in the colour coffee. But unfortunately that didn't work as I wanted it to. So I changed the ink to a plum colour, I believe. Again in archival ink, because when it goes on you can see it a bit better, as you can see here. So obviously if you want to stitch onto the page directly, you can do that, or you can do what I've done. I just thought it would be better for my page to have stamping instead. So the 10th and final prompt is to add up to 3 pieces of ephemera to complete the page. I've chosen again to go with stamps as my ephemera, and they're vintage looking stamps, the stamp set that I just showed you. And I'm stamping those onto the page randomly in the colour sepia, which is the colour I used for the stitches before. Apologies, I said the wrong one earlier. But the sepia colour goes well with the background because it's just another shade of brown and it looks good, I thought. So I'm just getting those stamped across the page. Now looking at the focal image, I did decide that it was too stark for the rest of the page, so I'm going to go in with that same ink and just add a little border around it and a small amount on the middle, just to make sure that we've got it a bit more cohesive. So thank you again for joining me today. I hope you take part in the prompts list, and if you did, please do tag me on Instagram with the hashtag #SparklePrompts. I would love to see your creation. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for future videos. The full prompt list is at the end of the video as usual, and I will see you next time, where we will turn your creative spark into a creative sparkle. Thanks. Bye.